Hi, I'm Alia Ishak. This is the Green Beehive, where we host business leaders and experts from different industries to discuss the transition towards sustainability, providing you with insights and solutions from all sectors of business. Today, I spoke with Hanife Ymer, Head of Sustainability Services for MENA region at JLL. Hanife has been involved in the sustainability sphere for more than 20 years. She's also a member of the Green Bee Network. So I wanted to hear her analysis on the impact of the transition to low-carbon economy on the real estate sector. I also wanted to hear her take on COP26. Let's tune in.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Hanife. Thank you for joining the Hive today. Let's jump right in and start talking about the topic of the hour, COP26. Obviously, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of analysis, a lot of polarization. I've read so many polarized views about it. And I'm just curious, what's your take on it? Was it a success, in your opinion? Did it meet your expectations?
So I attended the Paris Agreement COP, and which was such a successful COP. And I think what COP26 has shown how much effort is required to get an agreement with so many countries. So it's important to understand that this is not a small task in any way, shape, or form. So with COP26, I do have mixed views about it. I don't think it's as successful as I would have loved to have seen it. I think we would have liked to have seen greater ambition, greater commitment by countries. But there were some little small wins, which are always great. When you've worked in sustainability as long as I have, you take those small wins wherever you can. And so obviously there were commitments around methane gas reductions. There was deforestation commitments. And I think the Global Financial Alliance for Net Zero was also another one, which is focused on allocation of capital to a low carbon transition. And I think what's really notable about that particular commitment is it's not just about capital for new green initiatives or green or sustainable initiatives. This is about capital for transitional arrangements. So now, as an organisation, if you're listening to this, you will have a much more challenging time to access debt and capital unless you can demonstrate a transition plan. So I think that's quite a profound change to what we've seen historically. So some good things and perhaps not so good things. The one thing that's not so good is just that the commitment still doesn't get us to that 1.5 degree target. The International Energy Agency has put us at about, if all the commitments that were put on the table by each of the respective countries were met on the due dates that were proposed, they would get to about a 1.8 degree. But the plans seem to show about a 2.4 degree impact. So I think we need more commitment from countries.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess if anything, this just shows us that collective action is just really difficult, right? It's challenging. Just get everyone on the table to agree. But perhaps this could be a start, if we are to take the more positive take on things to remain optimistic.
One thing I would also add is what I think has been quite promising is countries that historically have been less incentivized or taken initiatives to try and commit and develop, I think have come forward at this particular COP. And I think that the Middle East has actually really positioned itself quite well at this COP. And, the fact that the UAE will be hosting COP28, but we've also got Egypt hosting COP27. I think these are really good developments for the Middle East. And we're seeing amazing initiatives being announced. It's a space to watch. I'm actually quite encouraged by countries that you normally wouldn't see front and centre in some of the commitments actually taking a position at COP26.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely very interesting. And that's also one of the things I noticed over the past few years. We've been seeing some initiatives in the Middle East, including Saudi, UAE, and now, with UAE hosting COP27 Egypt and then UAE COP28, I think that's really, really encouraging. So let's talk about the Middle East a bit. I mean, you've got these different initiatives going on. What do you think the transition to a low carbon economy looks like in the Middle East? What are the mega trends?
So I think there's no secret that it's decarbonising the energy supply network across the Middle East. But the governments in the Middle East have seen, they need to transition away from the oil and gas sector to diversify their economies. And, they've taken that long-term strategic look and put in place, an effort and a focus to try and do that, not just within country, but also looking at How do they diversify their economy as well? So I think kudos to them for taking that long-term vision, first and foremost, because that's what's needed. Short-termism doesn't work when you're looking at sustainability issues, and that's been one of some of the problematic areas on sustainability. So I think that energy mix will change, and we've seen big announcements around solar. We've seen one of the biggest solar parks developed in Dubai. Just even the Expo, one of its key themes, the UAE Expo's key themes is sustainability. I think the most profound commitments have been the UAE and the Saudis' net zero commitments, and I think we'll start to see some other commitments come from other Middle East and GCC countries. What that means, though, so I guess listeners will probably think, "Oh, so what? You know, I'm a private developer in the UAE. What does it mean to me?" But when countries make such commitments, they have to filter them through the economy. Governments can't get to those commitments on their own. They need private sector. They need all parts of society and the economy to play its part. And so what you'll see is we'll see a filter through the economy of mandates, perhaps for greater efficiencies in the built environment, decarbonisation of the energy systems. So if you think you're not going to be impacted, I think that's a really narrow view. I think you really should think about what does it look like for you when a government makes such a commitment, and start to analyse what risks you need to manage, but also what opportunities, because when you're trying to transition economies and whatnot, there will be reallocation of capital, and reallocation of capital could mean opportunities for developers to access new funding.
And which sectors do you think would be impacted by this the most in the Middle East? I mean, obviously the energy sector is one, but if we were to look at the real estate sector, for example, what do you think is the impact on the real estate industry in the Middle East when it comes to low carbon transition, and more globally, if we are to analyze the global trends when it comes to this industry in particular?
So I think if you start from the beginning, the financiers, so globally, we know for sure that big institutional investors, private equity funds are really very focused on embedding ESG considerations into their capital allocations. And I know with the stock exchanges in the region, so all stock exchanges, I think Bahrain just came on board recently, have all put in place ESG requirements. Part of that initiative from the stock exchanges is to try and attract capital into the region, to try and get investors to come into the region. And so they will only do that if they can get some comfort over the ESG or sustainability. So again, not just a low carbon response, but also, from a social perspective and a governance perspective, are companies doing in the region. So again, that provides opportunities to developers, infrastructure projects, etc., to diversify perhaps their capital allocation, capital mix. So there's opportunities there. We're definitely seeing a thirst, if I can use that word, for green buildings globally. Again, I'm from Australia, so I know a lot of the pension funds in Australia really are wanting to be early movers in grabbing green assets globally. In fact, many of them have started to set up shops in other regions like Singapore, London, New York, so they can get to some of these deals on green assets earlier. So I think we'll see that increasing. There are organisations across the UAE who I know are looking at their portfolio of assets and looking at how they can green those portfolio of assets, adapt those portfolio of assets to be much more resilient to climate risk, so physical climate risk. But also a lot of these companies are being asked questions, not just from local, regional investors, but global investors around their ESG story. So I think we'll see a lot more responses where we start to see embedding of ESG in the built environment from design. I know a lot falls away at that costing stage, but I think I'm hoping we can start to see a change in sort of the value chain in the built environment in the Middle East, where each of the players understand their responsibility and how we can share some of the responsibility and try and create and develop and design a value chain in the built environment where sustainability can be properly embedded so that it doesn't fall away. And the end result is a set of assets that are inefficient, don't respond to societal needs or environmental needs. So I think that's something that is profoundly needs to change within the region, and hopefully will with some of these mandates from the government.
Yeah, absolutely. Hanifa, one of the things we like to cover in these podcasts is we like to answer questions of, people who are non-experts or just looking from the outside and are trying to understand, for example, why is the transition to sustainability not happening in the pace that, that we would like it to happen in? What are the challenges? Someone who's not an expert in the real estate industry might be thinking, why isn't it a requirement for all buildings to be green buildings? Or what's stopping that transition? What are the challenges that are hindering this sector from transitioning more quickly towards a low carbon economy?
So it's a combination of factors. I think the infrastructure is not quite set up to allow a lot of the initiatives to be embedded. So if you look at other countries, they have a well-connected, efficient energy market. So you can, if you are to put renewable energy or solar panels on a residential building, any excess energy can be channeled back into the grid. And in some markets, you actually get a reduction on your energy bill when you do feed back into the grid. In no way are some of these other markets perfect. Don't get me wrong. Again, from an Australian perspective, the tariffs as a resident, if I have solar panels on my house and I feed back energy into the grid, the tariffs tend to be lower than the tariffs I'm paying at peak load times. That perhaps de-incentivizes a little bit, but at least there's that capacity and ability. So I think in the Middle East, some of that doesn't still exist. I've heard stories of developers wanting to do the right thing and put in electric vehicle capacity in the car parks, but have had a lot of red tape to get through to get simple charging stations within the car park. So again, some of that bureaucracy, some of the streamlining, some of the process to make some of those things happen needs to be there. And I think those are barriers to some of the initiatives being put in place. I think awareness is sometimes continues to be a problem. I think just across the whole sustainability life cycle, there's inconsistency of understanding what does it mean. You could argue at the centre of sustainability is a values position or values thinking. And so people always come to sustainability from their own value set. But I always say, and having been in sustainability for 20 odd years, I've always come at it that, it doesn't matter what your philosophy or value set are, or what you believe or don't believe when it comes to sustainability. Governments, investors, consumers are all moving in this space and making decisions that are made with a sustainability lens. So regardless of what you believe or don't believe, if you don't look at this, you could risk missing out on opportunities, or you could risk being stuck with a building that no longer holds its value compared to a building that has all these smarts, that's socially inclusive, that's going to hold its value for a longer period. The last thing I'll say on awareness and understanding is people always think sustainability comes at an additional cost. I really challenge people to stop thinking that way. I just don't think that that's no longer a viable way of approaching sustainability. I mean, we are seeing all those real estate developers and designers who really embed sustainability in thinking, take that leadership position.
Yeah, no, thank you for shedding light on that. That was actually going to be my last question to you when it comes to, balancing the costs versus the opportunities when it comes to sustainability. And this is actually one of the things we always highlight as well at Green Bee is that, this whole idea of a trade-off is not as, heavy as people think. There might be short-term costs, but eventually it is the more strategic thing to do. It is the most cost efficient thing to do on the long term. And definitely it is the more smart business decision.
I think sustainability is just another tool, another lens to help you do business better. It should help you. Again, it should be business as usual. And I do challenge a lot of things that corporates and companies do because it's a nice to have. And I would challenge some of that. I think really if you aren't embedding sustainability in your day-to-day activities, embedded in your risk assessments, embedded in your strategic planning, your business planning, embedding it in your procurement, sustainable supply chain. If it doesn't align to your business, then I would question why do it at all. So I think, again, it has to be normalized and operationalized through your business to really drive and extract the most value from it.
Thank you so much, Hanife. I couldn't agree more. And thank you again for joining the Hive today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for listening. I'm Alia Ishak, CEO of Green Bee. If you'd like to find experts to help your business in any sphere within sustainability, please visit our platform at greenbeeinsights.com.